Hi everyone, my name is Nick Menichetti and I'm a fourth year medical student from Texas Tech El Paso applying to urology this fall. I'd like to thank Dr. Sturm and our UCLA team for the contributions of this project, and I'd like to thank the Society of Pediatric Urology for the opportunity to present our systematic review of evaluating fetal external genital morphology. Ultrasound is key in evaluating external genitalia for identifying normal sexual development and detecting congenital abnormalities, and this is usually done through penile length, penile width, and anogenital distance measurements. However, the problem that exists is that there's a lack of specificity in diagnosing genitourinary pathology, so inconsistent measurement techniques and evaluation. Our goal for this project was to 1. Assess the variability in sonographic measurements, and to 2. Establish normative values and growth curves via a systematic review. Fetal ultrasound measurement techniques may vary between clinical providers. For penile length and width, penile length was usually measured from the tip of the glans parallel to the penile axis to its base where it joins the scrotum, also known as penoscrotal. Penile width was measured from the widest point across the penis. There is variability in methods, and there's alternative methods that include pubopenile, stretch penile, and cavernosal, but the most common in the literature were penoscrotal. For anogenital distance, the measurement was taken from the center of the anus to the beginning of the scrotum by placing electronic cursors. However, it's also important to note that differences also exist in fetal position and plane. This systematic review employed the PRISMA guidelines, and through a database search of PubMed, Google Scholar, and Web of Science, we found 173 legible articles through various inclusion and exclusion criteria, which included studies examining genitourinary abnormalities, intrauterine growth restriction, and magnetic resonance imaging. We finally included 10 articles with penile length, width, and anogenital distance measurements for analysis. Results of the studies were standardized to means in millimeters and 95% confidence intervals for each parameter for all the studies. Each parameter was then plotted for each gestational week. The overall means were calculated at each gestational week, which was represented by black circles, and the regression line was generated for the overall means with its linear equation, which is the blue dotted line, shown on the right corner of the plot. There are differences in the variability among the means between studies, some with longer whiskers, some with shorter. Based on the overall means, penile length was estimated to increase around 0.8 millimeters per every week of gestation, and the regression had a very good fit with a high R-squared of 0.98. In looking at penile width, the regression showed a good fit with a high R-squared of 0.99, and penile width was estimated to increase around 0.4 millimeters per every week of gestation. There is less observed variability around the anogenital measurements than for penile length or width, as you can see by the shorter whiskers around the means, but there was more variability between studies as demonstrated by the smaller R-squared of 0.48, and the anogenital length increased by an average of 1 millimeter per week of gestation. Our study determined that sonographic biometrics provide a framework for monitoring fetal genital development. However, limitations in the study include varied measurement techniques that could restrict study generalizability and studies that lack postnatal outcomes and clinical correlation. However, we will run a meta-analysis for each outcome, potentially excluding studies that did not have the necessary data to account for the variability around each study's estimates. Future work in this space includes the importance to develop standardized methodologies for measuring fetal genitalia, importance to determine the utility of ultrasound predicting fetal genital anomalies. It's also important to investigate the relationship between prenatal maternal comorbidities and fetal genital measurements. One of the key takeaways from this study is that we hope that these growth curves may provide a reference for prenatal fetal genitourinary measurements, and we hope this will be the first comprehensive review that can be accessed for pediatric urologists and maternal fetal medicine experts in their clinical practice. Thank you so much for listening to our talk today. We appreciate your time and can't wait to meet you all at the SPU in September. We have included our contact information for any questions regarding our work. Thank you so much.